Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning to you all. May there be a blessing upon your house today. May we pause just for a moment as we get started this morning to welcome the peace, the beauty, the majesty, the holiness of the Sabbath into our hearts and into our lives, even into our minds, and may it fill our mouths. May we rejoice with the singing of the songs of Sabbath, of the freshness, of the refreshing, of the joy of the Sabbath. May those things now begin to wash over us and begin to change our countenance, begin to change our minds, change our hearts, and tune us into the sounds of heaven, into the sounds of the throne room of our King, away from the trials and the tribulations and the difficulties and the anxieties and the traumas of daily life in this realm on earth, in the 6-day realm, and into the heights of the 7th day, the heights of holiness, the heights of the courts of the King, the heights of his wisdom, his insight, his love, his compassion, his mercy, his goodness. Shabbat Shalom. May it be peaceful on earth. May it be the goodwill of God toward men, alive in us, acting through us, speaking out of our mouths with our words. This is the Parsha of Tavo. It is the 50th of the series of the entire annual cycle of the Torah. And so we are close to the end. We only have 54, and this is number 50. This particular section we're talking about in Tavo, has got the name Tavo, is Deuteronomy 26:11, I believe it is, through 28:9. 29:9. Let me make sure I got my numbers right here. Yeah, it's 26:1, through 29:9. And Tavo is a Hebrew phrase. Hebrew phrase that mirrors the first two words of the Parsha. Tavo means literally when you come in, when you transition, when you make the big move, when the culmination of where you are is reached and you begin to step into the next realm, when you come in. And this is the Parsha, I call it, of the end game coming into view. The end game coming into view, where you can see it, where you can understand. We right now live in a world in which we see through a glass darkly. We walk, it's said, by faith and not by sight. But in what is our faith? What lies beyond the seen realm that we hold to, that we hold fast to? Not just the person of the creator of the universe. That is the first important thing. Not just the messianic plan and the person of that manifested as Yeshua. Not just those things, but the plan, the actual end game of the Holy One. He has a great plan. That's what we hold on to. That's why we endure in the current day. That's why we do not lose faith. We do not lose hope. We do not lose passion. We do not lose focus, because we have a view of the end game, what he intends to do, how he intends to bring about his will upon the earth in real ways. And this is the Parsha in which Moshe brings Torah basically to its first conclusion. We're going to have a couple of those before it's over with in the next 2-3 weeks. But he's going to bring us to this great crescendo and open the windows of vision to where we can see the heavenly idea of what the end game looks like for human beings upon planet Earth. When you come in, when the transition takes place, when the transformation of humanity and the earth, the physical, geographical earth, occurs, when those things happen, what will take place? There is a plan, there is a protocol, there is a vision, and he wants us to catch this vision. So welcome to the Parsha of the end game coming into view. Why is Moshe taking so much time to build up to this? We have been in a particular discourse, the second of his speeches on the plains of Moab, since Deuteronomy chapter 4. There's some discussion or some debate as where it really started. It appears to start either at 4:1 or 4:44, but basically since chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, that's 20-something chapters ago, he has been pouring out a particular vision, building up to this point and next week's point, which is the second crescendo, the largest of all crescendos, Parsa Nitzavim. You are all standing here. So why has he been so passionately calling us to, as I call it, come up here and see what I see? Speaking for Moshe, that is. Him saying to us, this whole speech from Deuteronomy 4 through 29 is singing a big speech saying, come up here, beloved, come up here. Those who will read these lines over the course of generation after generation in all nations, in all tribes, in all languages. Well, those who will read this, who will touch base with this, come up here, he would say, Moshe would say, and see what I see. There is an end game. So why has he been so passionately doing it? Why has he been so passionately laying out for us micro and macro infrastructures that we are to build upon, co-laboring with the Holy One, following his lead and his specifications to build on earth a kingdom of heaven-centered society? Why the micro infrastructures of Shema lifestyle, of fear of the Holy One, of the things we've talked about before? Why the macro infrastructures? Why do we govern ourselves different than other people do? Why do we not follow the political theories of the nations? Why do we not get caught up in their social justice movements and their reform movements? Why do we have a bigger vision? Why do we hold fast to something that we cannot see yet? Because Moshe is going to give us a vision of the end game. We are going to perceive what it looks like, what it will look like whenever we come in. Why has the Moshe spent so much time teaching us how to avoid, eschew knee-jerk and emotional reactions to situations and traumas, and pseudo-intellectual ideas and concepts and principles, and applying of those kinds of educational, intellectual things to life's most difficult challenge? Why is he teaching us another way? A higher way, a more excellent way than the ways of the nations, than the ways of the institutions, than the ways of the religions, than the ways of the philosophies? Why is he saying we need to hold on to something higher? And why is he training us so meticulously in redemption, restoration thinking protocols instead of following the ways of the world and its passions, its instincts, its appetites, its urges, the flesh and its hormones? Why? Because, you see, we're called to something very great. I know, beloved, that at times in this world, in this time of each year, you are probably going through personal issues, personal challenges that almost, some of them will rock your world. There may be illnesses in your family or in your own body. There may be injuries you have sustained or people that you know have sustained. There may be financial setbacks. There may be all sorts of crises of government and crises of economy that are going on. There may be relational challenges that would certainly engender compassion and empathy for you. I'm not denying the fact that in this world we have tribulation, we have trials, and they are severe, and we desire to be compassionate and empathetic toward other people experiencing them. But there is one difference between us and the rest of the world. We also have a vision for the end game. We also know how all this turns out. We also know what the plan of the Holy One is to redeem and restore all things, all human beings, all bloodlines to his intended state, to the Adamic state of being the shadow, the image of the Holy One upon the earth, and being fruitful, having dominion over the earth. We also know his kingdom plan is bigger than the world can ever imagine, to restore creation to its original intended Edenic state of beauty and fruitfulness and shalom. So that's why Moshe has been so passionate. He's caught a glimpse of what the plan of the creator of the universe is. And he wants to inspire us, but he wants to infect us with this vision that he sees, and with the passion and the energy and the empowerment that comes through this, that we will be able to hold on and keep our shalom and keep our joy in the midst of whatever the world may throw at us, because we see the end game too, because we understand the majesty of what the Holy One is doing, will make us forget the trials, the tribulations that we've gone through. Well, that being said, let's begin a little more discussion. Ki Tavo. In addition to being the parsha of envisioning or the end game, bringing it into view, I call it the parsha of passionate pilgrims and penitent prodigals. I like to alliterate with the P's there. Let me repeat that again. The parsha of passionate pilgrims and penitent prodigals. Which one are you? Are you a passionate pilgrim or a penitent prodigal? You're one of the two. But this is the parsha, the section of Torah in which Moshe discusses the end game and the role that it be played by passionate pilgrims on the one hand and penitent prodigals on the other. The idea is to see this vision of sitting in Jerusalem, the holy city, with Messiah there, and sitting there and seeing from the nations, coming up the roads to Jerusalem, caravans of passionate pilgrims with penitent prodigals in their wake, all together coming home, singing, dancing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the first fruits, bringing in the harvest and the evidences and the covenant promises of the Holy One. So, here we are at this particular stage in Torah discussing these things. Moshe kicked off this discourse to teach us there is a blueprint for our future. There is somewhere we are going, and there is a certain level of impact we are called to and are destined to have there. Over 20-something chapters, Moshe has been showing us some stark differences between two roads. The road that is the pathway of life the Holy One has designed for humanity, which is the Torah. He has designed this to be the maximal, the optimal way in which human beings can relate to one another, can relate to Him, and can relate to the creation and all of its species. That's the Torah, and I call that the Pilgrim's Pathway. So he's given us this one road, showing us this one road, the Pilgrim's Pathway, and where it leads, and how we overcome the challenges of the flesh and the pseudo-intellect and the emotions and the hormones and the appetites and the urges of the human body, and the fallenness of mankind and its obsession with the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This whole idea of man's will versus the Holy One's will. Overcoming that, he's shown us the pathway of the pilgrim, the pathway of Torah. But Moshe has not been content. As he said, come up here and see what I see, he showed us that there is another pathway. In addition to the pathway of the pilgrim's pathway of Torah, he shows us there is another way that human beings can take. And most choose this other broad path. And that broad path that leads to destruction is the prodigal's pathway. The prodigal's pathway is the pathway taken by multitudes of fallen ethnicities, cultures, nations, institutions, ideologies, philosophies, and people of the world who have said, I do not want the pilgrim's pathway. I do not want the Torah. I do not want to walk in accordance with the optimal, perfect instructions of the creator of the universe. I want to forge my own way. And so he's given us, there's two pathways, the pilgrim's pathway of Torah and the prodigal's pathway of rebellion. Now, once one of these pathways leads to marvelous beauty, the pilgrim's pathway lets us establish our lives as a blessing, a fountain of blessing. Not only for our own selves and our families and our households and our culture, but also for all families on the face of the earth. This was the promise to Abraham, that you would become a blessing to every family on the face of the earth. That's every bloodline, every ethnicity, in every geographical region of the earth. That's the calling of the Pilgrim's Pathway. And it is the pathway described in Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the Torah of the Holy One, the Pilgrim's Pathway. And in his Torah he meditates day and night, and he will be like a tree planted by the rivers of living water, which brings forth its fruit in its season. It's also the pathway. This Pilgrim's Pathway of Torah is also the pathway David was talking about in Psalm 23. When he says, you paths of righteousness for your name's sake. You lead me in paths of righteousness for your name's sake. It is the place where we are. He is our shepherd, and we will not want. Where he makes us lie down in green pastures, where he leads us beside still waters, where he restores our soul, where he anoints our head with oil. Yes, where he sets a table for us in the presence of our enemies. This is the pathway, the Pilgrim's Pathway. It's the Torah. It's the Pilgrim's Way. But the other pathway, the prodigal pathway, it leads in a very different direction and involves a very different quality of life. A life of perpetually chasing after the wind, of miserable failure after miserable failure, a life of delusion, a life of disappointment, a life of disaffection, a life of disorientation, disaster, and despair. Those things are the pathway. Those are the end of the prodigal's pathway. Except for one thing. There is still hope at the end of the prodigal's pathway, if they become a pilgrim instead. Moshe has warned us that the prodigal pathway exposes people to a swirling vortex that will inevitably pull that person's life, and not just their life, but the lives of their family, their spouse if they have one, their parents if they have them, their children, their beloved, their friends, their businesses, their finances, their culture. Will inevitably draw all those things into a death spiral of folly, of disorientation, of dishonor, of unclean lust, of vile passions, of futile thinking, of vain imagination, of envy, of lawlessness, of lovelessness, and of every kind of dysfunction. Don't let yourself take one more step down the prodigal's pathway. Turn now. Turn, beloved. Turn and get back to the Pilgrim's Pathway and come and see the end game that Moshe has ordained and that we would look at and see. In fact, this is the overriding focus of this season of the year. This is the season of teshuvah, of turning back to the Holy One, turning back to the Pilgrim's Way, turning back and going away from all the things of the prodigal's pathway and all of its nuances and all of its seductions and all of its deceptions, and moving back to what we were ordained and made for, the end game. Well, you see, if you're going down the prodigal's pathway and you're seeing what I'm telling you, you've raised up to where Moshe is showing you what he's seeing. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to end with that swirling vortex of dysfunction and pain. There's still time to change the road you're on, and the pathway is led to, you get to it through teshuvah. Teshuvah, consciously turning to the Holy One. Just make the call. Just make the decision. Just commit yourself that I'm turning back to you, O Holy One, today, in this moment. I'm turning back to your will. I'm turning back to your ways. I'm turning back to your words. I'm turning back to your plan, that you might teach me how to live an optimal life in my season upon this earth and then in the world to come. Practical, observable changes should begin to take place. Begin to cultivate those practical, observable changes of attitude and of lifestyle, of conversation, of vocabulary, and of impact upon your world. These practical, observable changes are called fruits of teshuvah, or in English you might think of it as fruits of repentance. Okay, the season that we're in, we focus daily on Psalm 27. This is the season of Teshuvah, turning, and one of the things that helps us to do that, according to tradition, is that we review verses of Psalm 27 every day. Well, today, the verses I would like to point your attention to go with this Teshuvah theme, the idea of the end game. And here it says in English, "One thing have I desired of the Holy One. That will I seek and pursue after." And what is that? That I may dwell in the house of the Holy One all the days of my life. To behold the beauty of the Holy One, and to inquire, investigate, search out things in His temple, in His dwelling. For in the time of trouble, which we all know, He will hide me in His sukkah, in His overstretching tabernacle. In the secret place of His tent He will hide me. He will set me high upon a rock, and my head will be lifted up above my enemies all around me. I will be able to see things with a bigger perspective and the end game in mind rather than reacting on a knee-jerk basis. Therefore, and then we are people of the therefore. We're called to be people of the therefore. And here's the therefore in Psalm 27. Therefore, I will offer sacrifices of joy. Therefore, I will offer sacrifices of joy. Therefore, I will offer sacrifices of joy in His tabernacle, in His tent, in His dwelling, in His place. And I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Holy One. These Psalm 27 verses 4 through 6 are the focus of this Teshuvah moment to begin in your hearts to turn, O beloved. I know things are struggles, things are difficult, things are challenging. I know there are heartbreaks all around you, and people don't treat you right, and the world doesn't treat you right, and it's not fair, and there are injustices and oppressions wherever. But here's the situation. The answer will not be found in anything human beings can dream up. The answer is already contained in the end game plan. So turn back. Be people of the therefore. Therefore, I will offer sacrifices of joy in His tabernacle, and I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Holy One. Okay, so it's time to talk about the end game and the end time ingathering that is the sign that the end game is in play. The end time ingathering of people and things and substances, bringing them into the land, bringing to them the Messiah King, bring them to Jerusalem, bringing them for the community of the Holy One to administer throughout the world. This is the week number 50 of Torah, as I've told you, the Jubilee week. 50 is, of course, the number of the Yovel in Hebrew, the Jubilee in English. This idea, and I want you to get this feeling, if nothing else, if you carry nothing else from this discussion today, please get this. Jubilee should bring jubilation. I want you to open your hearts in the deepest way to receive jubilation within your soul, within your spirit, within your mind, within your will, within your emotions. Subject all other things, surrender all other things besides jubilation. The Holy One has ordained you to be joyful. And to be joyful despite, not presuming no other problems exist. To be joyful in the midst of your problems because you see the end game. So Jubilee week, should we begin to open up the doors and the chambers, the portals of jubilation in your spirit. Joy should be your portion. We are going up to Jerusalem. We are going up. The final ingathering will soon occur. The Messiah will reign on His throne. Hallelujah. And there will be songs of rejoicing. The first time that Tavo as a phrase was used in the Torah was found in Leviticus chapter 25. And it started by saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel," the Holy One, speaking to Moshe. He told the Holy One, Moshe, "Speak to Bnei Israel," the children of Israel, "and say to them, Tavo." See, from Leviticus chapter 25, He's been preparing Moshe to see something about the end game. and how it relates to Jerusalem, how it relates to Israel. So he says, Ki Tavo. The Holy One spoke to Moshe, said, tell Bnei Israel, Ki Tavo, when you go in, when you come into the land which I'm giving you. And then he says something amazing. He says, then the land will enjoy a delight in a Sabbath to the Holy One. Not that you're going to declare a Sabbath. The land will respond to your presence by declaring rest and shalom and peace. This will be the end game. We are going to bring about the end of the frustration of creation by virtue of doing it the Holy One's way, following his protocols to the end. And it goes on to say, and a little bit later in that chapter, in chapter 25, when he's introducing the idea of Ki Tavo and the end-game vision, he says, cause the shofar of the Yovel, the Jubilee, to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. We're almost there. We're just a few days away. Cause the shofar of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, on Yom Kippur, Yom HaKippurim. You are to cause a sound of the shofar to resound throughout all your land, your being plural, of all the Bnei Israel, of all the nations of the earth who come as the penitent prodigals to Bnei Israel. So, here we are in the Jubilee week of the Torah. It goes on by saying, the holy for you then is the 50th year to be. The 50th is to be holy, is Kadosh. There's a Kedusha energy in it. And the picture he's drawing is the end game. And he says, in that year you are to proclaim liberty. Dror in Hebrew. It means the flowing of light, the birthing of light, freedom, free flying bird, of free bird flying idea, of release from the stall, calves released from the stall. Proclaim this throughout the land in all its inhabitants. It is to be a yovel to all, for you. It is each of you a return, a tshuv, a teshuvah to your inheritance, to your purpose, to your mission. And each of you is to return. Each of you is to come back. Shuving, teshuvah is to take place for all of you. To his mishpacha, his family. Every human being is to return. This is the oval. Well, appropriately, the words to the assigned text have a strong connection to Jubilee. Whenever he says Ki Tavo in our beginning of our parsha, you should begin to immediately sense the feeling, the jubilation of the Jubilee. And we're going to see how it will play out, and how Psalm 27 and all of its discussions about I will sing songs of rejoicing, I will make sacrifices of joy in his tabernacle make apply. Ki Tavo is all about returning, about making teshuvah, about then rejoicing and dancing and singing and carrying our sheaves, our bundles of first fruits that we bring forth from the various different lands of exile to which we've been. From the opening line of the Haya Ki Tavo El Haaretz, in other words, and it will happen when you come into the land. This parsha is going to prophesy to us about reconnecting with our home land, with our Father in heaven, with the creation plan, with our calling in it, with our mission for it, and with our real reason for being alive at such a time as this. Our real reason for having faith and trust despite whatever situations may occur beyond what the men can do or governments can do or societies or religions or philosophies or ideologies or movements can do. One day soon, beloved, get your eyes on it, get your mind around it, get your heart caught up in the spirit of it. One day soon, the holy temple, this time the one that is built by Messiah himself, will be standing in the midst of the city of the great King. And we will be rejoicing. We will come from the nations. We will come bringing the first fruits of the nations, bringing in the sheaves of the harvest. Now, the overriding theme of this parsha as we lead to this crescendo is that we are looking forward to the ultimate ingathering. There's an ingathering of pilgrims on one side and an ingathering of prodigals on the other, but both will flow together joyfully. Both will dance. Prodigal and pilgrim together will dance in the streets of Jerusalem. Prodigal and pilgrim together will sing songs of praise unto the Holy One. Prodigals and pilgrims together will serve the Holy One and declare his jubilee. When the Holy One, this is the psalm that I would like to go with this to get you in the spirit of this, Psalm 126. It begins like this: when the Holy One turned back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream. Our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongues with singing. And then they said among the nations, the Holy One has done great things for them. The Holy One has done great things for us, and we are glad for it. Bring back our captivity, O Holy One, now. Bring it back now. As the streams of the south come, cause those who have sown in tears to reap in joy. Have you sown with sadness and tears, beloved? Calls those, Holy One, who have sown in tears to reap in joy. Calls him who continually goes forth weeping, bearing precious seed for sowing, surely to return, to make teshuvah, to come back home, to come in rejoicing, bringing his bundles of first fruits, his sheaves, with him. That's Psalm 126. Okay, it pictures the final ingathering of the creation. And every year we have a rehearsal, because the final ingathering or harvest of this year, of the creation year, takes place. And our final ingathering for the year of 5782, since creation, is imminent. All over the world, people of every nation and ethnicity, and every tribe and every tongue are preparing to reap the final harvest of the year, of the agricultural year. In the northern hemisphere, it's the trees and the vines that are laden with fruit. It's the olives, it's the grapes. South of the equator, however, it's early species of grain, barley and wheat, that are heading out, and farmers are sharpening their scythe to harvest them. But wherever you may be, and whatever it is you have planted and watered and tended and kept in your vineyard, in your orchard, in your grove, in your pasture, in your field, or in the garden of your life, that's about to be revealed. Whatever you have sown, you will reap. And whatever you have sown will be very visible for the world to see. You see, the King is coming. The King, Messiah, is coming to the field. He's coming to the earth. He's coming to his precious creation. And whatever he finds here that is flourishing and ripening for harvest, be it herb or briar, be it wheat or tare, be it wild or be it tame, be it birth from the tree of life, or be it birth from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, whatever it is about to be exposed. Over the course of this past year, what then have you been planting in your life garden? What have you been watering, keeping watch over? What have you been nurturing to maturity? What have you been spending your time, your effort, your passion, your energy, your money doing? What have you been trying to aim? What harvest have you had in mind? Because whatever you've been spending your time, effort, that's the harvest that will be revealed. Before that takes place, it's still time to change the road you're on. All right. Isaiah 2, verse 3. Come, beloved, let us go up to the mountain of the Holy One, to the house of the God of Yaakov, Jacob. He will teach us his ways. We will walk in his paths. For out of Zion, Torah will go forth, and the Dvar Adonai, the word of the Holy One from Jerusalem. May it happen. One day soon, you see, we will gratefully come forth as folk of the covenant from all nations, from all ethnicities, from all tribes, from all bloodlines and tongues in the world, and we will carry our bundles of first fruits and our tithes up to Jerusalem to celebrate the greatest of all feasts. Catch the vision. Embrace the joy, the simcha. Lift your eyes now above the dramas of the day and the troubles of your life. And lift your heart above the angst and the outrage and the worries and the obsessions of the flesh and material things and vain imaginations. Lift them all up. Get ready to recite your verses for the King. Because this week Moshe is going to put words in our mouth. He's going to put words of praise. We say we will come singing. I will offer sacrifices of praise. Yes, I will sing. What will we sing? The words of Moshe. Moshe is going to give us the words to sing. He says he wants you to know this is our testimony. This is our story. This is our song. He's going to give us words to say. He's going to put words in our mouths. Atmosphere-shifting words that carry the weight of the King's chords in our mouths coming out upon the earth. The first thing he's going to give us is a script, a testimony to present with our first fruits, with the bundles that we bring forth from our place, and with the peoples that we come forth as being the prodigals that have come forth along with us as pilgrims. And then he's going to give us another script, another set of words, the divinely atmosphere-shifting words. And that is the script that we will speak and when we come in for the third year tithe completion, when we finish a season in the kingdom mindset, the kingdom ways of setting aside certain things for certain purposes that are specified in Deuteronomy 14 particularly. So we have the two scripts beginning. We have script words put in our mouth to teach us what we just say when we bring our first fruits up to Jerusalem. Secondly, when we complete the first 3-year tithe cycle, every tithe cycle for that matter, to come forth and say, we make these declarations. Vidui ha-maser in Hebrew, the testimony of the confession, the declaration of the tithe. And then third, we have our boundary declaration. We will put up stones that have on them the words of the Torah that declare to all people, stones that cry out, as it were. This, as for me and my house, as for the people in this land, as for those who walk beyond these stones and come into this land, this is the pathway we will follow. The pilgrim's pathway leads to all people to the ultimate harvest. And then we have the go tell it on the mountain section, where we will go and speak certain things on Mountain Eval and on Mount Gerizim. And then we will teach ourselves about what it means to either be blessed or to be cursed based upon how we align ourselves with the pathways that we've discussed. So, very briefly, we have just a few moments, but let us not forsake our call to worship, our Barachu. Sing with me if you know the words. If not, let the Hebrew begin to waft into your spirit and speak to your eternal spirit, even if your mind does not even understand. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vayet. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bakar Banu Milko Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. So open our eyes, O Holy One, now that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. The closing lines of last week's discussion, the preliminaries to this end-game vision that Moshe is about to declare over us, came in Parsha Kitetse. And they ended with this: remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Egypt. How he met you on the way and attacked you in your ranks. And all the stragglers at the rear when you were tired and when you were weary. And he did not have any fear of God. Remember. And it is to be, therefore. We're the therefore people. Therefore, when the Holy One your God has given you rest from your enemies all around, in a land which the Holy One your God is giving you to possess as a heritage, as an inheritance, then you are to blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. You are not to forget. Oh, there's something happening here. He's opening these doors, opening the portal. What's going to happen this week in discussions of Parsha Tavo? As part of going out, we're going to face Amalek so many times. So many people will try to destroy us, to do away with us. So many people will hate us without a cause. So many people will lie about us and slander us and make up all sorts of tales, dehumanize us, call us animals and apes and monkeys, and try to drive us into the sea. So many things will happen in this regard. He says, oh, but don't forget. You're the therefore people. And your therefore is, in this case, when the Holy One, your God, has given you rest from your enemies all around in the land, which your Holy One, your God, is giving you. So let's go forward. That is our background. That's our lead-in from last week, the opening lines of Parsha Tavo. And I will speak some in Hebrew and then try to translate it for you in my way in English, but realizing the Hebrew is speaking to your spirit, even as the English is speaking to your mind and your will. All right, so let's go into it here. V'haya ki tavo el haaretz. And it will come to pass when you have transitioned into the land. Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala. That the Holy One, your God, has assigned to you in stewardship. V'lachakta mereshit kol pri ha'adma. That you are to take some of the first fruits of all the produce of the ground. Asher tavi me'artzeka, which you are to bring from your land. Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, that the Holy One, your God, is giving you. V'samta v'taneh v'halakta el hamachom, and put it in a basket and walk. Take a journey, trek to the place the Holy One will place his name. You see, Parsha Tavo is Moshe's Jubilee script. The 50th Parsha has this whole jubilation idea in it, that we're bringing forth our sheaves from our harvest time, that the end game is in sight, that there's a reason. With this Parsha, he's going to conclude to come up here and see what I see discourse on the plain, and he is going to give us what is equivalent to Handel's Hallelujah chorus. The idea that we're going to sing and praise, for he shall reign forever and ever. There is more to this life than what we see going on right now. There is more to this life than just completing a cycle and living a few years and dying and leaving hopefully children and maybe a little blessing around the world. No, there is so much more. And Moshe will try to open our eyes to that. He will lift our eyes, even above the disciplines that he's been teaching us for the growing season. And he will direct our attention to the covenantal endgame, the reason for it all, the reason we are alive. He wants us to have our eyes on the great harvest, not on the current trauma. He wants us to have our eyes on what the Olam Hazeh will finish with. The current age will culminate in the millennial reign of Messiah upon the earth and his drawing of all people to his kingdom. Now, to give you a little better picture before we conclude today, before we get to let you go into your individual groups or your individual moments to read and study the scripts, the words the Holy One desires to put into our mouths, and the declarations he desires us to make and the choices he desires to make this day, I want to give you one more little section. Isaiah, the haftarah of this week, the haftarah of consolation for this particular week is Isaiah 60. Verses 1 through 22. I won't read it all, but I'll give you a flavor of what it is. This is the sixth of the seven haftarot of consolation that prepares for the high holidays. And this week, the covenant prophet will say to us, Kumi Ori, arise and shine. Do you hear it? Do you feel it? Was it pulsing in you? Kumi Ori, arise and shine, because your light has come. The glory of the Holy One has risen upon you, and nations will walk by your light. Yeshua said, you are the light of the world, even though he is the light of the world. The prophet of the end-game vision then goes on to prophesy that the abundant wealth of all nations will flow up from the covenant peoples into the covenant people's economy. and will cause the world, not just so we can enjoy it, so we can bless the world with it, so we can be the vessels of life, health, and peace to the rest of the nations of the world, causing all the world to flock to Jerusalem and join in the worship of the great God of Abraham, of Yitzhak, and of Yaakov. This is the end game. This is the vision. Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Holy One is upon you, is risen upon you. For behold, darkness will cover the earth, and deep darkness the people. But the Holy One will arise over you, and his glory will be seen upon you. The Gentiles, the nations, the power-hungry, the deceived peoples of this world and their ethnicities will come to your light. The prodigals out there will come to your light. And kings will bask in the brightness of your arising. So lift up your eyes now and all around and see that they all are gathering together even now. It's an unseen thing from the world standpoint, but for our ideas, we should be able to see it. They are gathering together even now, coming to us. So our sons are coming from afar, and our daughters will be nursed at our side, and you and I will see and become radiant, and our hearts will be filled with joy. We will swell with joy because of the abundance of the seas that become turned to us, and the wealth of the Gentiles will come to us to administer in a multitude of camel covenant caravans will cover our land. Dromedaries from Midian and Ephah and all those from Sheba will come, and they will bring gold and incense, and they will proclaim the praises of the Holy One with us. And all the flocks of Kedar will be gathered to us, and all the rams of Jeboet will be given to serve us and in our temple, in the Holy One's temple. And all will ascend with acceptance there. Will receive favor at his altar. And the Holy One says, I will glorify the house of my glory. Well, beloved, it's time to conclude our session today. I've merely opened this door, hopefully given you a hunger, a thirst to dig into the actual words of this parsha, the instructions of what words are supposed to be on our lips, in our mouths, as we see the end game, as we go beyond, as we hold on in faith, in emunah in Hebrew, of passionate holding on to the plan of the Holy One, not to our own emotions and feelings in this age. Thank you, beloved. If you're listening from anywhere, just give us a note, drop a note, give us who you are and where you're tuning in from. If you have any prayer requests, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please feel free to jump right in and put those on the comment section, either on Facebook Live, as we're on now, or on YouTube, as will be posted later. Blessings, Shabbat Shalom. Be joyful. Rejoice. The end game is on its way.